Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Rajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Sorry. Also, Namachar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Swasti Gaur, Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopada Shama Kunda Radha Kota Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Shamuna Tulasi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samavetta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru Shikaranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 52, Verse 18. Shirajo Vacha Bhagavan Bhishmaka Sutam Rukminim Ruchirananam Rakshasena Vidanina Upayema Iti Srutam Shirajavacha. The king said, Bhagavan, Supreme Lord, Bhishmaka Sutam, daughter of Bhishmaka, Rukminim, Srimati Rukmini Devi, Ruchira, charming, Ananam, whose face, Rakshasena, called Rakshasa, Vidanena, by the method, Upayeme, he married, Iti, thus, Srutam, heard. Translation, King Parikshit said, the Supreme Lord married Rukmini, the beautiful-faced daughter of Bhishmaka, in the Rakshasa style, or so I have heard. Report, Sridhar Swami quotes the following Smriti statement, Rakshaso Yuddha Haranat. A Rakshasa marriage takes place when the bride is stolen from one's rival suitors by force. Similarly, Sukadev Goswami himself has already said, Aragya Pramatya. Krishna had to beat down opposing kings to take Rukmini. Text 19, my Lord, I wish to hear how the immeasurably powerful Lord Krishna took away his bride while defeating such kings as Magadha and Salva. Therefore, we should not think that Sri Krishna was actually afraid of Jarasandha. In the very next chapter, we will find that Sri Krishna easily defeats Jarasandha and his soldiers. Thus, we should never doubt the supreme prowess of Lord Krishna. What experienced listener, O Brahmana, could ever grow satiated while listening to the pious, charming, and ever-fresh topics of Lord Krishna, which cleanse away the world's contamination? Sri Badarayani said, there was a king named Bhishmaka, the powerful ruler of Vidarbha. He had 5 sons and 1 daughter of lovely countenance. Rukmi was the firstborn son, followed by Rukma Rata, Rukma Bahu, Rukma Kesha, and Rukma Mali. Their sister was the exalted Rukmini. Hearing of the beauty, prowess, transcendental care, and opulence of Mukunda from visitors to the palace who sang his praises, Rukmini decided that he would be the perfect husband for her. Purport, the word Sadrasam indicates that Rukmini and Sri Krishna had similar qualities and thus were naturally attracted to each other. King Bhishmaka was a pious man, and therefore many spiritually advanced persons must have visited his palace. These saintly persons undoubtedly preached openly about the glories of Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna knew that Rukmini possessed intelligence, auspicious bodily markings, beauty, proper behavior, and all other good qualities. Concluding that she would be an ideal wife for him, he made up his mind to marry her. Purport, just as Lord Krishna was described as Sadrasam Patim, an ideal husband for Rukmini, being just like her, Rukmini is described as Sadrasam Bharyam, an ideal wife for Sri Krishna, being just like him. This is natural since Srimati Rukmini is Lord Krishna's internal potency. So, here we have the beginning of the story of a marriage of Krishna to Rukmini. And as it mentions here in this verse, the marriage was Rakshasa style, which means that the groom steals away the bride in spite of opposition from various parties. So the scriptures describe various ways one can get married, such as a love marriage, or here the Rakshasa marriage, or the more common one is that the parents arrange for the marriage and give the bride away. So there are various alternatives of marriage, and they all get some approval in certain circumstances. And we see that there are various marriages done in these various ways in the Bhagavatam by various personalities like kings. So here's an example of the Rakshasa type of marriage, where the groom takes away the bride by force. So though all these things are mentioned in Scripture, we don't see most of them happening nowadays. I don't think if this happens, the forcible one happens, probably they get arrested by the police or something like that. Of course, the love marriage is very common in the modern world. But we find that normally the conventional marriage is the arranged marriage, at least in India. So though all these various methods are approved in some sense because they're mentioned in Scripture, over time the conventional arranged marriage became the acceptable form, and the others were not so well approved of over many hundreds and thousands of years, I suppose. It became the conventional type of marriage. Nevertheless, the other ones are mentioned in Scripture, so therefore there is some sort of approval of these various types of things. But at the same time, we don't do them in the modern world. So there are some things in Scripture which are mentioned, but we don't do. Just like there are animal sacrifices as well. We don't do those. Of course, there is some Scripture that counters whatever the Scripture says. So some Scriptures talk about animal sacrifices. And then we find that certain things are forbidden in Kali Yuga, such as animal sacrifices, cow sacrifice, etc., horse sacrifice. So we find various statements in Scripture about what to do. And we can take one of them, and then we can apply that and say, we'll do horse sacrifices, we'll do cow sacrifices, because that's what Scripture says. And we could ignore the other statement that in Kali Yuga these things are forbidden. Or we can do the Rakshasa marriage and say it's scriptural, so it's legal, and we can fight against everyone and steal away the bride. Though we can look at Scripture and see this, if we look in Scripture, we'll find contrary statements also. So we cannot always take isolated statements and say that that's the final truth, because there are contrary statements. So this becomes confusing, because then we say, why do the sages and why do Vedavyas say contrary things? Well, we'll see even Krishna says contrary things. So in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, he says, Karma Yoga is the best. Right? And you worship the Devatas. Then in chapter 9 it says, people that worship Devatas are foolish. So, we find contrary statements even in the Supreme Lord. So we have to understand the purport of statements and why they're stated in certain ways, even though they may look like absolute statements, is not always true. They're true under certain conditions. Other things are permanent. They must be followed in all cases. So that is the nature of Scripture. But we don't know which is the absolute statement and which is the relative statement. Very difficult for us to understand. That is why we do need acharyas to explain the relevance of things and to show how some statements are stronger than others. So the general opinion of the sages is that statements of jnana are stronger than statements of karma. And statements of bhakti are stronger than statements of jnana. And that's the general procedure. So therefore, we see that in the 10 aparads, there is one aparad. Don't consider the glorification of the holy name or bhakti to be exaggeration. But we do have to consider exaggeration statements about karma or jnana. So our acharyas quote often the statement from the Vedas that says that you go to Svargaloka, and that is eternal. And that is used by Jaimini to support his karma kanda position. So it's a statement in Shastra, and you can take that scripture as a statement, and based on that you can make a whole philosophy. And you can just ignore the jnana section, the bhakti section, everything else. You can come up with some conclusion like that. But then we'll find contrary statements also. Svarga is not eternal, Svarga is temporary. And we see clearly in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says you go to Svargaloka, then you fall down again. They're not permanent. So why Scripture says like that? Untrue statement. Svargaloka is eternal. Why does it say that? Why would it say a lie? So some statements in Scripture are exaggeration, over-glorification, in order to encourage people to do that particular process. Otherwise, they won't follow them. If you want everyone to do karma yoga and they say it's not a good process, nobody's going to follow it. So therefore, they say it's the best process. And it's got eternal value to it, eternal goals. If you say, oh, yeah, you do it and do all this and spend all your money on sacrifices and dedicate, and you go to Svargaloka and then you fall down, then they'll say, well, that's useless. So they exaggerate things in order to encourage people to do something by giving extraordinary results that are not true. So, of course, we see that it is also said that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to give people faith by which they can worship devatas, etc. So this is one thing he does. Shiva gets glorified, or a particular devata gets glorified beyond actually what they are, to encourage people to worship those forms. So, therefore, this over-glorification is there. But in relation to Vishnu or Krishna or the process of bhakti, there's never any over-glorification because it's the highest. So anything you can say is not enough glorification. So any result you could get from performing bhakti, and it is not an exaggeration. You can get anything in the material world, anything in the spiritual world, anything in liberation, anywhere, anything possible through bhakti. Not an exaggeration. Why? Because the Supreme Lord can do anything. He can do the impossible. But one does not get the mercy of the Supreme Lord and therefore get the impossible results from doing karmas or doing yoga or jnana. No. So, therefore, bhakti is an extraordinary process, and its glorification is never exaggeration. But other statements in Scripture about other things, other processes and other deities are often exaggeration. So we can quote them in order to follow that process and get faith in it, but it may not be the highest thing after all. Of course, Bhagavad Gita also says, don't disturb the mind of the people, faithless people. So if they're doing karma yoga, don't tell them to give it up and do jnana or whatever like that. Let them do it, encourage them. So that is one process. We encourage people to do what they're doing in a good way. And therefore, there is this over-glorification to encourage people. However, if they have some a little bit of a higher qualification, then it's time for them to switch over to do something higher. So then we can give those persons proper knowledge and say, okay, now this is a higher process. This is a relative process. So we should go to the next process, or the next process. So the devotee has to use discrimination in preaching. So we say, don't preach to the faithless persons, preach to the persons with faith. So if a person has a little faith that he's worshiping devatas, then we can start to tell him the higher truth and about the relative nature of certain statements in Scripture and absolute nature of the statements concerning Vishnu or Bhakti. So the lesson we learn is that we cannot take everything absolutely in the Scriptures. We have to see its place. And to do that, then we have to accept the ideas that are presented by the acharyas so that everything becomes harmonious. What is we have to figure out, first of all, what is the highest goal and what is the highest process, and then everything will follow into line from that. So that's exactly what the acharyas do. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he indicates this. He's saying the only purpose of Scripture has three purposes: Sambandha, Abhijaya, and Prayojana. It presents the highest tattva, highest truth, that is Supreme Lord, Vishnu or Krishna. It presents the goal that we have to attain prema, and it presents the process, bhakti. That's the ultimate purpose of Scripture. Okay? So all the other processes and all the other goals are secondary to that. So what is the process of karma yoga? What is the goal? Svargaloka. Higher, refined material enjoyment. What is the process again? What is the goal? Liberation. So these are all secondary goals. And the processes are secondary processes. But the Scriptures may glorify these processes to encourage people to do them. So we shouldn't be bewildered by any of that. So, of course, the devotees don't criticize the other processes because they are scriptural processes. But we understand their place that they are relative processes, not absolute processes. And therefore, if there's a choice and we have to do one or the other, then we'll choose worship of the Lord and bhakti over worship of devatas and other processes. So that is the conclusion of the Bhagavatam, that is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. And the acharyas were following give this conclusion. So therefore we have to read very carefully when we see these statements. And so if we see a statement like this, oh, Krishna did a Rakshasa marriage, so I can do it also, that we have to use our intelligence a little and see what the acharyas say about this. What is the approved process now? Whatever. So we cannot readily come to conclusions about things simply based on what Scripture says or what Krishna does or someone else does in the Scripture. We have to examine very closely and see the reasons for doing it and what are the other statements in Scripture that may contradict it. Then we get the proper conclusion. So here we have Krishna arranging for his marriage, and we find that Rukmini developed some attraction for Krishna without even seeing him. She heard about him from others, and then she decided he will be my husband. So this is a very exalted mood to develop attraction simply by the hearing process, and it was attraction for the Supreme Lord. Now, unlike the people of Vrindavan, the people outside of Vrindavan recognize Krishna as Supreme Lord. He's Bhagavan, and the Yadus openly proclaimed him as Supreme Lord. So, therefore, Rukmini must have also heard this, but she was not simply wanting to marry the Supreme Lord. She also appreciated his wonderful qualities. And of course, that's natural because Supreme Lord has all wonderful qualities. And they're all perfect. So naturally, she would be attracted. Of course, we find that some people are not attracted. Who are those persons? Demons. So we have persons like Shishupala or Kamsa or Jarasandha or Kalayavana. They're not attracted to Krishna's qualities at all, or his form. So it's devotees who are attracted to the wonderful qualities of Krishna. And they accept him as Supreme Lord. So Rukmini obviously was a devotee of the Lord. But she was spontaneously attracted to those, to Krishna and his wonderful qualities. So therefore, as explained, actually, it's natural because she's the Shakti of the Lord. So, and she's more or less playing a role here of gradually manifesting her eternal relationship with Krishna. So, this is an attraction for the Lord before even meeting him, which we can say is a purva raga, attraction prior to meeting. Just as the gopis became attracted to Krishna before actually discussing with him in detail or talking to him in the Ras Leela. Before that, they didn't have intimate contact, but they became attracted to him. So that's also purva raga. Then they meet him. Then they may separate. So then there's another type of longing. So that's called vipralamba in Madhurya Rasa. And then that again is followed by meeting again. So in the spiritual world, of course, they say there's a permanent relationship there. So we have what is called sthiti, permanent union of the lover and the beloved. As in Vrindavan, we have Radha and Krishna. So in Dwarka, we'll have Rukmini and Krishna, etc. But in the pastimes just in the material world, then we get a manifestation of purva raga, and then after meeting we get vipralamba, then we get meeting again. So we get a variety of within the love by having separation and separation without having met, appearing to meet at all. So that is the case here, where Rukmini has not met Krishna yet, and she develops a great longing and intense attraction to him, which manifests in many ways later on when she's about to get married against her will. And then finally Krishna appears, so the intensity of her love is manifested at that point in time. So this is the beginning process where her love becomes manifested, and it begins to grow and grow. So it is natural, of course, because she is the Shakti of the Lord, but it goes through different stages, as it would in a normal case of someone developing love for a person, even though in the spiritual world it's eternal. Here her love gradually develops based on the wonderful, attractive qualities of Krishna. And Krishna also becomes attracted to her, because she also has most wonderful qualities, naturally, because she is the Shakti of the Supreme Lord. So therefore there's mutual attraction between them. And there's nothing, therefore there's not anything really wrong with the way in which he abducted her in the Rakshasa style, since they were highly qualified for each other and most attracted to each other, and she was not attracted to anybody else. These verses describe how there was a mutual attraction between them, which naturally arose because they are eternally related as the Supreme Lord and the Shakti of the Lord. So it was a natural development that is happening here, is described here. So ideal, they're ideal. Krishna is the ideal husband because he is Supreme Lord. She is the ideal wife because she is eternally the Shakti of the Lord. So therefore they deserve to be married to each other. This, of course, was also perceived by others. They understood that the qualities of both are ideal, and they are ideal match for each other. So they supported. And even the father, he supported it also because he was a devotee of the Lord. But the brother did not. So this was the problem in the whole pastime. He opposed, so therefore he arranged for her marriage otherwise, and it's created the big problem. And therefore Krishna came and abducted her by force.
We see this, even Duryodhana also, he also abducted on, I don't know what's her name, but there we see this, the bride was not agree, but he abducted. So what kind of marriage is this?
Who's that?
Duryodhana.
That was Samba.
No, Duryodhana.
Yeah.
He also abducted. Duryodhana also, because Pandava also went, but when this Duryodhana said that, Yudhishthira also went the same as Sava. But when this bride didn't choose Duryodhana as a husband, that time when she about to choose Yudhishthira Maharaj, then immediately Duryodhana became angry, because immediately Duryodhana abducted her from there. So what kind of marriage is this? Because here a bride, not chosen
Duryodhana's wife.
Yeah.
Who was that?
That first wife.
I don't know about that story.
First wife, yeah.
Okay, it's a Rakshasa marriage, but not ideal, since the wife was maybe not so willing or whatever like that. Was she willing?
No.
So
Later she agreed.
Okay, so that's also part of the Rakshasa style.
But here we see Rukmini, she wanted Krishna as a husband.
Yeah.
But here,
so naturally, the brother and the father should have agreed to that, but the brother did not. So that's why the problem arose.
Another question we see that you are explaining about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. We see that in the material world, normally people choose what process they're supposed to follow according to the association whom they meet. If someone is meet with those who are following Karma Yoga, definitely they start following the Karma Yoga. If someone meet with the Jnana Yoga, definitely they will. So, but it's not the choice of the person who is following the Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. It's depend on the association, we can say. depend on the association of the person,
Yeah.
whom they are associating. Because in the material we will see people are making a karma yogi. Very few are following the bhakti yogi. So my question is that, so how to this, divert their mind? No, this karma yoga is not the ultimate, organic is not ultimate, bhakti is the ultimate.
Well, only through association with devotees, but maybe a gradual process, because you cannot preach to the faithless. So they have to develop faith first.
They have a faith.
Huh?
Otherwise, then why they are following the karma yoga or
No,
jnana
faith
yoga?
and bhakti. Until they develop faith and bhakti, then we cannot preach to them.
But this is very gradual process. What
Yeah,
is it?
gradual. So gradually, by Gata Sukritis, then they may develop faith, then we preach to them.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I have two questions. First, in one of the lecture you were talking that the holy names are spiritual. I mean, the sound of the holy names are spiritual. Yeah. So, first question is, are the Vedas spiritual?
Yeah, all scriptures are spiritual. But Vedas require qualification for chanting and studying, etc. Whereas name does not. You cannot broadcast the Vedas for everybody to hear. Actually, it's forbidden. A Sudra should never hear the Vedas.
So, you were talking about relativity and absoluteness. So, can we conclude from this statement that relativity exists in spiritual world also, because in the material world, if one performs
Relativity is only in relation to processes in the material world, such as karma, gyan, and yoga, which are material processes. They're material. Spiritual world, there's no processes like that, because there's nothing material in the spiritual world. So then it's not relative anymore. But in the material world, these processes are in the gunas. They're material. So then there's relative good and bad there. Whereas bhakti is nirguna. Supreme Lord is nirguna.
Maharaj, in Upanishad it is mentioned that there are two birds sitting in our heart. So one is enjoyer of the fruit and one is witnessing the another bird. So in pure devotee case, so how it is happen when that enjoyer of the fruitness?
What's that?
Means when a person jiva becomes pure devotee, so that another bird which is enjoying the fruits of the result, so how in pure devotee case how it happens?
No, the enjoyer of the fruits is the jiva who is in ignorance and he's simply enjoying in the material world. So if we take to the process of bhakti, we stop enjoying the material world.
So there are two birds sitting in the...
The other one is the Supreme Lord, not enjoying the fruits.
So when that jiva becomes pure devotee, what happened to that another bird?
Becomes Bhagavan.
That Duryodhana first wife was Bhanumati.
निरंतरा श्री सच्चिदानंद भागवतम की